The first-class seat on Delta Flight 1844 to Nassau felt like a throne. Grace settled into 2A, the leather cool against her wrists, and accepted a flute of champagne from the flight attendant with the same steady hand that had signed away a lifetime of obligations 2 days earlier. At 74, she had never flown first class. She had never flown anywhere, really, unless you counted the Greyhound to Atlanta when Danielle was 9 and needed braces. The bubbles tickled her nose. She smiled at the small rebellion of it. Below, the Florida peninsula slipped away like a bad memory. She pressed her forehead to the window and watched the coastline shrink until it was nothing more than a green thread stitched to a blue quilt. Somewhere down there, in a subdivision of identical beige roofs, her daughter was probably opening the mail and finding the certified letter Grace had sent from the post office on Sample Road. The envelope contained 3 things: a photocopy of the canceled $500 monthly transfer, a printout of the new will leaving everything to the National Council on Aging, and a single line in Grace's careful cursive: "The ATM is closed. Enjoy the silence." The plane banked south over the Gulf Stream, and Grace closed her eyes. She had not slept more than 3 hours since Mother's Day, but exhaustion felt different now, clean, like the ache after a long overdue stretch. In her lap lay the manila folder Mr. Henderson at the bank had prepared: deed to the condo at Ocean Crest Towers, Unit 12B. Statements showing $392,000 in a brokerage account she had forgotten existed. A cashier's check for $50,000 made out to herself, the first deliberate withdrawal she had ever made for her own pleasure. She ran a thumb across the raised seal. The paper felt alive. Customs in Nassau was a breeze. The officer, a young man with a lilac polo and a smile that looked practiced on cruise ship passengers, stamped her passport and said, "Welcome home, Mrs. Evans." The phrase startled her so completely that she almost corrected him. "I'm not from here." But the words caught behind her teeth. Maybe she was. Maybe home was wherever nobody expected her to apologize for breathing. A taxi took her east, along Bay Street, past pastel Parliament buildings and conch vendors under straw hats. The driver, a woman named Marva with gold hoop earrings, talked non-stop about the Junkanoo Parade and the new resort on Cable Beach. Grace let the Creole-tinged chatter wash over her like warm rain. When they turned onto West Bay Street, the Atlantic opened up on the left, blinding and endless. She rolled the window down. Salt air filled the cab, thick with diesel and hibiscus. For the first time in years, her lungs did not feel borrowed. Ocean Crest Towers rose 12 stories above a crescent of white sand, its balconies dripping bougainvillea the color of fresh blood. The lobbies smelled of lemon polish and money. A concierge in crisp white greeted her by name. Someone from the management company had been alerted. "Miss Grace, we've aired the unit and stocked the fridge. The key fob is programmed to your thumbprint." She almost laughed. Thumbprint. As if she were royalty instead of a widow who still darned her own socks. The elevator whispered upward. When the doors slid open on the 12th floor, the hallway was quiet except for the distant shush of waves. Unit 12B sat at the end, its door the color of sea glass. Grace pressed her thumb to the pad. The lock clicked like a satisfied tongue. Inside, the condo was exactly as the photos had promised, and nothing like them. Sunlight poured through floor-to-ceiling windows, striping the teak floors in gold. The living room opened onto a balcony wide enough for a dinner party. Beyond the rail, the ocean rolled in slow, hypnotic breaths. She stepped outside. The wind lifted the hem of her linen blouse, new, bought yesterday at Dillard's, with cash from the $50,000 check. It fluttered like a surrender flag she no longer needed. The kitchen gleamed. Quartz counters, a sub-zero fridge humming with Perrier and mangoes, an espresso machine she would learn to use tomorrow. In the master bedroom, a king bed faced the water, its duvet the pale blue of robin's eggs. On the nightstand sat a welcome basket, a bottle of Sandeman's rum, 2 crystal glasses, and a card from the management company. We are honored to have you home. Again, that word, home. She unpacked the single suitcase she had allowed herself. 3 cotton dresses, 2 bathing suits she had never dared wear, the pearl necklace Danielle had returned unopened, a framed photo of her own mother at 25, dark hair, defiant chin, the same stubborn tilt of the head Grace saw in the mirror now. She set the photo on the dresser and touched the glass. I kept the promise, Mama. She got her degree. I just didn't know the price would be me. Evening slid in on violet wings. Grace changed into one of the new bathing suits, navy, high-waisted, surprisingly flattering, and walked down the private boardwalk to the beach. The sand was cool underfoot, powdered coral and sugar. She waited until the water kissed her knees, then her thighs. The Atlantic was warmer than she expected, a bath drawn by God himself. She floated on her back, hair fanning out like ink, and watched the first star prick the sky. No one called her name. No small voice asked for juice. No adult voice sighed with exasperation when she entered a room. The silence was so complete, she could hear her own heartbeat. Back in the condo, she poured 2 fingers of rum, her first taste in 40 years, and carried it to the balcony. The lights of Paradise Island flickered across the water like misplaced constellations. She raised the glass to the night. "To burdens lifted," she said, and drank. The rum burned sweetly, all the way down. Sleep came easily that night, deep and dreamless. She woke at dawn to the sound of gulls and the smell of coffee she had remembered to program. On the balcony, the horizon was a thin line of pink. She sipped from a mug that read, "Life's a beach," a gift from the management company she found hilarious, and opened her laptop. The brokerage account blinked. $392,114.62. She transferred $5,000 to a new checking account titled Grace Evans, sole owner. Then she booked a scuba lesson for Thursday. At 74, she would breathe underwater. Why not? Days blurred into a rhythm she had never known. Mornings, yoga on the beach with silver-haired expats who called her New Blood. Afternoons, reading on the balcony, the golden notebook for the first time since 1972. The pages yellowed, but the words electric. Evenings, sunset cocktails at the tiki bar downstairs, where a bartender named Juno taught her to mix a Bohemian sky juice that tasted like forgiveness. She learned the names of clouds, cumulus, cirrus, the rare mare's tails that meant a front was coming. She learned the names of fish from the snorkel guide, sergeant majors, parrotfish, a lone barracuda that followed her like a suspicious butler. One Thursday, 3 weeks in, she received an email from an address she almost deleted, danielle.evans@hospital.org. Subject, Mom? She stared at the preview pane for a full minute before opening it. Mom, the bank says the transfer bounced. What's going on? Michael's mom says you changed the will? We're worried. Call us. Grace read it twice. Then she attached a photo she had taken that morning, herself in a wide-brimmed hat, standing on the balcony with the turquoise fee behind her, holding a coconut with a tiny umbrella. Caption, "Found a senior community I love. Wi-Fi is spotty. Love, G." She hit send, closed the laptop, and walked to the beach. The scuba lesson was harder than expected. The regulator tasted of rubber and salt, the weight belt pulled at her hips. But when she descended, the world went mute except for her own breathing. In, out, and the reef unfolded like a secret. Coral, the color of sunsets, fish darting in jeweled schools. A sea turtle older than she was glided past, ancient eyes unblinking. She reached out not to touch, just to acknowledge, "I see you. You see me." On the surface later, she cried inside her mask, tears mixing with seawater, weightless. Back on shore, Juno handed her a towel. "First dive?" "First everything," Grace said, and meant it. She bought a bicycle, powder blue with a basket, and rode it along the coastal road to the fish fry at Arawak Cay on Fridays. She learned to crack conch with a hammer, to dance to rake and scrape music without caring who watched. She made friends. Evelyn, a retired judge from Toronto who played a vicious game of gin rummy. Marcus, a painter who set up his easel on the public beach and sold watercolors to tourists for beer money. They called themselves the Balcony Brigade and met every evening at sunset, trading stories like baseball cards. One night, Evelyn asked, "No family back home wondering where you vanished to?" Grace considered the question over her second sky juice. "They know exactly where I am. They just don't know who I am anymore." Marcus raised his glass to becoming strangers to the people who never knew us. They drank. August brought a letter forwarded by the management company. Thick cream envelope, Danielle's handwriting. She opened it on the balcony during a rainstorm, the sea churning pewter under bruised clouds. Inside, a Mother's Day card, store-bought, saccharine verse about a mother's love never ending, a post-it note from Danielle. "We were wrong. Can we start over? The kids miss you." At the bottom, a child's scrawl, "Grandma, come home. Love, Ethan. Age 8 now." His handwriting had improved. Grace held the card until the rain soaked it, ink bleeding into watercolor smears. She let it go. The wind caught it, carried it over the railing, down 12 stories to the pool deck where it landed like a wounded bird. She did not go after it. September arrived with cooler nights. Grace enrolled in a watercolor class at the community center. Her first painting was clumsy, too much blue, not enough shadow, but Marcus hung it in the tiki bar anyway. By Grace Evans, age 74, first attempt. Tourists took selfies with it. She started a blog, postcards from a former burden, anonymized, of course. Within a month, 3,000 subscribers, mostly women over 60 who wrote to say they, too, had canceled the checks, changed the locks, booked the flights. She answered every comment. On the first anniversary of Mother's Day, she threw a party. The Balcony Brigade, the scuba instructor, Juno, even Marva the taxi driver. She wore the green dress from that awful Sunday, now altered to fit her sun-browned shoulders. They ate cracked lobster and drank champagne, chilled in a bucket of ice carved into a swan. At midnight, she stood on the balcony and raised her glass to the dark water. "To the woman who gave everything," she said, and learned she still had enough left for herself. Behind her, Evelyn started singing By the Light of the Silvery Moon. Off-key but earnest. One by one, the others joined. Their voices drifted out over the Atlantic, a small, defiant choir. Grace closed her eyes and let the music carry her forward, past the reef, past the horizon, into whatever came next. She was home.